Some people can recognize the value of a luxury tower from a mile away, but completely miss the value of the man standing beside an old pickup truck. At exactly 8:12 on a cool Monday morning, Marcus Bennett eased his faded blue Ford F-150 into the visitor parking area outside Whitmore Dynamics, one of the fastest-growing technology companies in America. The truck had more than 200,000 miles on the odometer, a few rust spots around the wheel wells, and a tailgate polished smooth by years of honest work. But Marcus parked it carefully as though it deserved respect. Sitting beside him was his 10-year-old daughter, Olivia, wearing a bright yellow backpack and hugging a neatly wrapped birthday present she planned to open after school. She smiled at her father with complete confidence, the kind only children can have. "Will we still make my piano lesson?" she asked. Marcus returned the smile without taking his eyes off the towering glass building ahead. "We will. We always keep our promises." He reached into the truck bed and carefully lifted a compact black equipment case that looked ordinary enough to pass unnoticed by anyone rushing into work. To Marcus, however, it represented weeks of late nights, quiet determination, and a promise made to someone who believed the company desperately needed it. He wasn't there to ask for a favor. He wasn't there looking for recognition. He had simply come to deliver something important before heading back to his small repair shop across town. Inside the lobby, executives hurried beneath polished steel beams, while elevator chimes echoed through the marble atrium, and the scent of fresh coffee drifted from a nearby cafe. Everything reflected wealth, precision, and confidence. Claire Whitmore, the company's 37-year-old CEO, stepped out of a black SUV, scanning the entrance with practiced efficiency until her eyes settled on Marcus's aging pickup occupying a visitor space closest to the front doors. Her expression tightened. "Whose truck is that?" she asked without slowing her pace. A security supervisor glanced outside. "Looks like some contractor." Claire barely looked again. "Have it towed. Visitor parking. Isn't for abandoned junk." The order was delivered with the same calm certainty she used during board meetings worth billions. Moments later, Marcus emerged from the lobby after checking in at reception and watched a tow truck begin fastening chains to his pickup. Olivia's smile disappeared. She clutched the birthday present against her chest. Marcus took one slow breath, rested a reassuring hand on her shoulder, and quietly said, "It's only a truck, sweetheart. We don't lose who we are because someone moves where we park." Neither Claire nor anyone standing beside her realized that before the sun set that evening, the same board that applauded her decisions would be searching the city, hoping the quiet father with the old pickup would choose to come back. Marcus watched the tow truck disappear around the corner without raising his voice or taking a single angry step. He simply squeezed Olivia's shoulder and offered the same calm smile that had carried both of them through harder days than this one. "Come on," he said softly. "Your school is still waiting for you, and birthdays are too important to waste on disappointment." Olivia nodded, although her eyes drifted toward the empty parking space where the old pickup had been only moments before. "My present is still in the truck," she whispered. Marcus paused for just a second before answering. "Then we will get it back tonight. A gift is never just the box. It is the love behind it." The little girl smiled again, not because the problem had disappeared, but because she believed her father always found a way forward. They walked toward the city bus stop 2 blocks away, as the cool autumn breeze carried the scent of roasted coffee and fallen maple leaves through the busy downtown streets. Marcus checked his watch. Every minute mattered now. He had planned this morning with military precision. Deliver the equipment case, pick up the truck, drive Olivia to school, return to Bennett Auto Restoration before 10 o'clock. Instead, he stood at a bus shelter beside office workers scrolling through their phones, while Olivia leaned against him with quiet patience. Across town, inside the executive conference room on the 42nd floor, sunlight spilled through floor-to-ceiling windows onto a polished walnut table where 12 members of the board prepared for the company's largest product demonstration of the year. Claire Whitmore entered carrying a digital tablet and the confidence that had earned her reputation as one of the youngest chief executive officers in the industry. She greeted investors, reviewed quarterly projections, and spoke about expansion plans worth hundreds of millions of dollars. No one mentioned the old pickup outside because, in Claire's mind, that matter had already been solved. Order had been restored. Meanwhile, Marcus and Olivia stepped off the city bus near her elementary school. Before she climbed the front steps, she reached into her backpack and pulled out a folded birthday card she had secretly made for him instead of waiting for her own celebration. "You can open it after work," she said. Marcus looked at the colorful drawing of the two of them standing beside the old truck under a bright blue sky. Above their heads she had written in careful handwriting, "Home is wherever we are together." He folded the card with extraordinary care and slipped it inside his jacket pocket over his heart. "This is already the best birthday gift either of us could receive," he told her. Olivia hugged him tightly before running inside with the morning bell echoing across the school courtyard. Marcus stood there for another moment, watching until she disappeared through the doors. Then he turned toward the nearest bus stop once more, completely unaware that only a few miles away, alarms had begun flashing across Whitmore Dynamics. Computer screens were filling with unexpected system failures, and a room full of executives was about to discover that the quiet father they had dismissed that morning had been carrying far more than a simple black equipment case. By 9:15 that morning, the atmosphere inside Whitmore Dynamics had changed so completely that even the quiet hum of the climate control system seemed louder than before. A warning notification flashed across the giant presentation screen. Then another. One by one, live dashboards turned gray. Financial forecasts disappeared. Manufacturing schedules froze. Remote facilities reported that automated production lines had stopped responding. The room fell silent. Claire Whitmore frowned and tapped her tablet twice before looking toward her chief technology officer. "What is happening?" she asked. The answer did not come immediately. Fingers raced across keyboards. Engineers exchanged anxious glances. Someone restarted a server. Another called the Network Operations Center. Nothing changed. A senior systems engineer finally cleared his throat. "The synchronization engine is rejecting every update." Claire crossed her arms. "Restore the backup. We already tried." "Then use the emergency recovery package." A longer silence followed. "It is incomplete." The words seemed to drain the confidence from everyone around the table. Investors who had been smiling only minutes earlier now leaned forward with worried expressions. A representative from a manufacturing partner checked his watch and quietly reminded everyone that every hour of downtime would delay shipments across multiple states. The room no longer felt like the center of a powerful corporation. It felt like a ship drifting without a compass. Downstairs, reception staff noticed a small black equipment case still sitting behind the security desk. It had never been delivered because the visitor who brought it had left before completing the process. The receptionist looked at the handwritten label attached to the handle. It read simply, "For systems integration. Deliver immediately." She picked up the case and carried it upstairs, believing it belonged in the conference room. Claire barely glanced at it before sliding it toward the technology team. "Open it." Inside rested a neatly organized diagnostic module, handwritten installation notes, and a sealed envelope. The lead engineer unfolded the first page and suddenly stopped speaking. He read it again much more slowly. His eyes widened. "Who brought this?" he asked. The receptionist answered quietly. "The gentleman whose truck was towed this morning." Every conversation in the room stopped. The engineer continued reading. "These notes identify the exact synchronization failure before it happened. Whoever wrote this understood the architecture at the deepest level." Another engineer examined the diagnostic device and whispered almost to himself, "This is custom built. Nobody outside the original design team should even know this interface exists." Claire looked from one face to another, waiting for someone to explain how a quiet visitor carrying an ordinary equipment case seemed to know more about the company's critical systems than her own department. Before anyone could answer, the oldest member of the board slowly removed his reading glasses and stared at the signature at the bottom of the final page. His voice was calm, but every word landed with unexpected weight. "Marcus Bennett." He looked directly at Claire. "Please tell me that name sounds familiar to someone besides me." No one answered. He closed the folder gently and let out a slow breath. Then we have made a very expensive mistake, because the man who walked out of this building this morning may be the only person who can prevent this company from losing everything before the end of the day. The room remained still for several long seconds after the name was spoken. The silence felt heavier than any argument because everyone sensed that an opportunity had already slipped through their hands. Claire looked at the folder again, searching for something she had overlooked. "Who is Marcus Bennett?" she asked quietly. The oldest board member, Richard Ellison, folded his hands on the conference table before answering. About 12 years ago, before this company became a household name, there was a systems architect who refused shortcuts, never raised his voice, and somehow solved problems everyone else believed were impossible. He built the synchronization framework that became the backbone of our entire platform. Claire frowned. "Then why have I never heard his name?" Richard gave a tired smile. "Because he never wanted recognition. When the company began expanding, he quietly left." Another director leaned forward. "His wife became seriously ill. After she passed away, he chose to raise his daughter instead of chasing executive titles." The room grew quiet once more. The chief technology officer carefully connected the diagnostic module Marcus had delivered. Within seconds, detailed system maps appeared on the screen. Red warning symbols highlighted every vulnerable process with handwritten notes explaining not only what had failed but why it had failed. One engineer stared in disbelief. "He predicted this cascade failure almost 3 weeks ago." Another whispered, "He even designed the recovery sequence." Claire stepped closer to the display. Every page reflected extraordinary precision. There was no arrogance in the notes. No criticism. Only calm observations, practical solutions, and reminders to verify every change twice before deployment. At the bottom of the final page, Marcus had written a single sentence. "Technology serves people best when pride never stands in the way of truth." Richard looked toward Claire. "That sentence sounds exactly like the man I remember." A financial officer suddenly interrupted the silence. "Our legal department estimates that every additional hour of downtime could cost more than $8 million in canceled production and contractual penalties." Another notification appeared on the conference screen. Overseas manufacturing partners had begun suspending automated orders until the network stabilized. The chief technology officer rubbed his forehead. "We understand the problem now, but these notes are only half of the solution. Whoever built this diagnostic tool also built the activation key. Without him, we cannot safely deploy the repair." Claire slowly lowered herself into her chair. For the first time since becoming chief executive officer, she felt completely unprepared. Her mind returned to the image of an aging blue pickup disappearing behind a tow truck, a quiet father comforting his little girl instead of defending himself, and a black equipment case she had never bothered to notice. Richard stood and buttoned his suit jacket. "There is no value in discussing blame while the company is sinking," he said calmly. "Find Marcus Bennett immediately." Claire looked toward the security director. "Track his visitor registration. Contact the towing company. Call every number we have." The security director hesitated before answering. He did not leave a business card. He signed in with a handwritten name, and after the truck was removed, he walked away with his daughter. Richard met Claire's eyes with quiet disappointment. "Then I suggest we stop searching for an employee we never appreciated and start searching for a father who showed us more grace than we showed him this morning." Within minutes, Whitmore Dynamics no longer looked like a company preparing for a record-breaking presentation. It looked like an organization racing against a clock no one could stop. Phones rang without pause. Computer monitors displayed frozen production schedules. The quiet confidence that had filled the executive floor that morning had been replaced by measured urgency. Claire Whitmore stood beside the conference room window, watching downtown traffic flow dozens of stories below, knowing that somewhere among those streets was the one person every expert inside her building suddenly needed. "Has anyone found him?" she asked. The security director lowered his phone. "We located the towing company. His pickup is still at their storage lot." The driver said Mr. Bennett signed the paperwork, thanked the staff for keeping the vehicle safe, and left on foot. Claire blinked. He thanked them. Yes, ma'am. The answer lingered in the room. No complaints. No raised voice. No threats. Only gratitude. Richard Ellison quietly shook his head. That sounds exactly like Marcus. Another board member looked toward the legal team. Did he leave any forwarding information? Only one receipt with the name of his repair shop, the attorney replied. Bennett Auto Restoration. Claire did not wait for anyone else to speak. Get the car ready. Richard looked at her carefully. Not a driver. She turned toward him. Excuse me. If you truly intend to ask for his help, you should be the one behind the wheel. His words settled over the room like a quiet lesson. Claire hesitated only briefly before nodding. 20 minutes later, she pulled into an older industrial neighborhood where brick buildings stood beside family-owned businesses that had served the community for decades. Bennett Auto Restoration was smaller than she expected. A weathered wooden sign hung above the garage door. Freshly restored classic cars sat beside dependable family vehicles waiting for routine repairs. The place smelled of clean motor oil, warm rubber, and freshly cut lumber from a neighboring workshop. Nothing about it suggested wealth. Everything about it suggested care. Claire stepped out of her car and paused before entering. Through the open garage door, she saw Marcus kneeling beside an elderly customer's station wagon. He was patiently explaining a repair while the elderly couple listened with complete trust. When the conversation ended, the husband reached for his wallet. Marcus gently raised a hand. The loose connection took 5 minutes. Save your money for your anniversary dinner. The elderly woman smiled with grateful eyes. You always do that. Marcus shrugged. Kindness lasts longer than invoices. Claire remained where she stood, unexpectedly reluctant to interrupt. Across the garage, Olivia sat at a small workbench finishing her homework, occasionally looking up to watch her father work with quiet admiration. The birthday card she had given him that morning was carefully tucked into the corner of his toolbox beneath a clear sheet of glass, protected like something priceless. Claire suddenly understood that the old pickup truck had never been the measure of Marcus Bennett's life. His wealth had been surrounding him all along, hidden in trust, integrity, and a daughter who believed without question that her father could fix almost anything. The only thing he had not been given the chance to repair that morning was another person's first impression. Marcus finished wiping his hands with a clean shop towel before walking toward the office doorway where Claire still stood in thoughtful silence. He recognized her immediately, not because of her tailored suit or the headlines that often carried her photograph, but because kindness and disappointment both have faces people remember. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. The only sounds were the steady ticking of an old wall clock, the soft whir of a ceiling fan, and the distant laughter of Olivia as she explained a math problem to the shop's receptionist. Claire finally broke the silence. Mr. Bennett, I owe you an apology. Marcus nodded politely but did not interrupt. She continued, her voice noticeably quieter than it had been that morning. I judged you before I knew anything about you. I judged your truck. I judged why you were there. I made a decision without asking a single question. Marcus rested the folded shop towel on the workbench beside him. That happens more often than people realize. There was no bitterness in his voice, only calm acceptance that somehow made Claire feel even more uncomfortable. She looked around the garage, taking in every carefully labeled tool, every organized shelf, every customer who greeted Marcus by name. This was not a man who had failed in life. This was a man who had quietly built one. Our systems are failing, Claire admitted. The board believes you are the only person who understands the recovery process completely. Marcus looked toward Olivia before answering. She was smiling as she colored the edge of a birthday card that had accidentally smudged that morning. How much time do I have before I need to pick her up from school? Claire hesitated, surprised that his first concern was not the company, the crisis, or even her apology. School ends at 3:15. Marcus checked the old watch on his wrist. That gives me a little over 3 hours. Claire carefully chose her next words. If you help us today, you could ask for almost anything. Marcus smiled gently. That is probably the difference between us. I did not come this morning hoping to receive anything. The sentence settled into the quiet garage with surprising weight. Claire lowered her eyes. Then why did you come? Marcus reached into a nearby cabinet and removed another identical black equipment case. Because 3 weeks ago I discovered a flaw that could eventually shut down your synchronization network. I helped design its foundation years ago. I knew someone should know before innocent people were affected. Claire frowned slightly. You could have sold this information to a competitor. Marcus shook his head. Thousands of families depend on those factories staying open. Mechanics, drivers, warehouse workers, cafeteria staff, custodians, software engineers. Their children did not create the mistake, so they should not suffer because of it. Claire slowly realized that while she had been thinking about market value, Marcus had been thinking about people. Before she could speak again, Olivia walked over carrying 2 paper cups of hot chocolate she had prepared using the little machine in the office. She handed one to Claire with an innocent smile. Daddy says everybody deserves another chance. Claire accepted the cup with both hands, unexpectedly moved by words spoken so naturally by a child. Marcus picked up the equipment case and his jacket, glanced once more at the birthday card resting safely beneath the clear glass on his toolbox, and quietly said, "Let us go help your company before more families begin worrying about tomorrow." The drive back to Whitmore Dynamics was almost completely silent. Claire kept both hands on the steering wheel while Marcus sat beside her with the black equipment case resting across his knees. Neither of them felt the need to fill the quiet with unnecessary words. Outside, afternoon traffic rolled steadily through the city, but inside the car the only sounds were the turn signal, the soft hum of the engine, and the occasional vibration of Claire's phone as another urgent message arrived from the board. She ignored every notification. For the first time in years, she realized that the person sitting beside her deserved her full attention. When they arrived at headquarters, security officers immediately opened the entrance without hesitation. The same employees who had barely noticed Marcus that morning now stepped aside respectfully. Several lowered their eyes, remembering the old pickup truck that had been dismissed so casually only hours before. Marcus greeted each of them with the same polite nod he would have offered at the beginning of the day. Nothing about his manner had changed. Inside the executive floor, the atmosphere remained tense. Computer monitors displayed frozen production lines, delayed shipments, and growing financial losses. Conversations stopped the moment Marcus entered the conference room. Richard Ellison walked forward first and extended his hand. "Thank you for coming back." Marcus accepted the handshake with a quiet smile. "Let us take care of the people depending on this company." Without another word, he placed the equipment case on the conference table and carefully removed the diagnostic module, several handwritten notebooks, and a small encrypted security key. The chief technology officer stepped closer. "We tried everything." Marcus nodded calmly. "I know. You tried to repair the symptoms. The problem began much earlier." He connected the diagnostic module to the primary system. Within seconds, hundreds of lines of system activity filled the display. He studied them silently, occasionally making short notes with a pencil instead of typing on a keyboard. The engineers watched every movement with growing curiosity. One finally asked, "How are you reading all of this so quickly?" Marcus never looked away from the screen. "Because I remember why every line was written." A deep silence settled over the room. Claire glanced toward Richard, who simply nodded as though nothing about that answer surprised him. Marcus opened one of his old notebooks. The pages were worn from years of careful use, filled with neat diagrams, timing calculations, and handwritten reminders. Across the top of one page he had written, "Never design a system you would not trust with your own family." He compared the notebook with the live system for another minute before gently pressing a single confirmation key. Nothing happened at first. Then one production dashboard turned green. A second followed. Then a third. Across multiple states, manufacturing facilities began reconnecting one by one. Delayed shipments resumed. Automated quality inspections restarted. Engineers stared at their monitors in disbelief as warning messages quietly disappeared. Nobody cheered. Nobody applauded. The room simply became still. Even the constant ringing of mobile phones had stopped. The chief technology officer slowly leaned back in his chair and whispered, almost to himself, "It was never the software that saved us today. It was the man who refused to let pride become more important than people." Claire looked at Marcus as he quietly closed his notebook and placed the pencil back inside the equipment case. For the second time that day, she found herself speechless, but this time it was not because of a crisis. It was because genuine character had accomplished what authority, money, and titles could not. No one moved for several seconds after the final recovery indicator turned green. The silence inside the conference room carried more meaning than applause ever could. Sunlight reflected across the polished table, while the soft hum of servers replaced the anxious alarms that had filled the building all afternoon. Marcus calmly disconnected the diagnostic module, closed the equipment case, and began organizing his handwritten notebooks exactly as he had found them. He behaved as though solving one of the largest technical crises in the company's history was simply another responsibility completed with care. Richard Ellison slowly rose from his chair and looked around the room. "Some of you joined this company after Marcus left," he said. "You know the products. You know the profits. But you never knew the man who gave this company its strongest foundation." Every eye turned toward Marcus. Richard continued. 12 years ago, investors wanted us to grow faster. They wanted shortcuts. Marcus refused because he believed every system should protect the people depending on it before protecting quarterly numbers. Many thought he was too cautious. Then his wife became ill. We offered him promotions, executive stock, and every title imaginable. He thanked us, resigned with complete grace, and chose to become the father his daughter needed instead. Claire lowered her eyes. She suddenly remembered the birthday card beneath the glass on Marcus's toolbox, the careful way he had watched the clock before agreeing to help, and the first question he had asked that afternoon. It had never been about money. It had been about what time school ended. The chief technology officer stepped closer. "Why did you never tell anyone you created this architecture?" Marcus smiled gently. "Because good work should keep helping people even after they forget who did it." Another long silence settled across the room. One by one, board members stood from their chairs. Not because protocol required it, but because respect did. Claire slowly walked around the table until she stood directly in front of Marcus. Her voice was steady, yet noticeably softer than it had been that morning. "I believed leadership meant making fast decisions. Today you reminded me that real leadership begins by seeing people before judging them." Marcus nodded. "We all learn in different seasons." Claire took a careful breath. "I judged an old truck instead of the father who drove it. I saw worn paint instead of quiet character. I saw an inconvenience instead of a blessing walking through our front door." Marcus looked toward the conference room windows where the afternoon sun bathed the city in warm light. "Most people are carrying stories you cannot see. That is why kindness is usually the safest decision." A notification appeared on the main display announcing that every production facility had returned to normal operations. Relief spread across the faces around the room, but no one looked at the screen for long. Their attention remained fixed on the quiet man preparing to leave before school dismissal. Richard smiled warmly. The company recovered today because one father chose grace over resentment. Marcus closed the final latch on the equipment case and glanced at his watch. "If everything is stable now," he said with a gentle smile, "there is a little girl waiting for someone who promised never to be late." Marcus left the conference room carrying the same black equipment case he had brought that morning. The difference was not in the case. The difference was in the silence that followed him. Every executive, every engineer, and every member of the board stood as he walked toward the elevator. No one had been asked to rise. Respect had simply arrived on its own. Claire followed him downstairs without saying a word. Outside the building, the afternoon sun reflected across the glass towers, while the city moved on as though nothing extraordinary had happened. Parked near. The entrance was Marcus's old blue pickup truck, freshly returned from the towing company. It had been washed, refueled, and carefully parked in the closest visitor space. Resting beneath the windshield wiper was a small envelope. Claire picked it up before Marcus could reach for it. "This belongs to you," she said quietly. Inside was reimbursement for every expense related to the towing, along with a handwritten apology signed by every member of the board. Marcus folded the note carefully and placed it inside his jacket beside Olivia's birthday card. "Thank you," he said. Claire looked at him with genuine humility. "Would you consider returning to the company? Name the position. Name the salary. We would be honored to have you lead our technology division." Marcus smiled warmly but gently shook his head. "I already have the most important position anyone ever trusted me with." At that moment, a yellow school bus stopped across the street. Olivia stepped onto the sidewalk carrying her backpack and immediately spotted her father. Her face lit up with the kind of joy that no title, no fortune, and no corner office could ever purchase. She ran toward him, and Marcus knelt to greet her with the same calm smile she had known all her life. "Were you late?" she asked. "Not even close," he answered. "A promise is still a promise." Olivia wrapped her arms around him before noticing Claire standing nearby. "Is everything all right now?" she asked innocently. Claire smiled through grateful eyes. "Yes," she replied. "Your father helped a lot of families today." Olivia looked up proudly. "He always tries to." Marcus opened the truck door, carefully placing the equipment case beside the birthday present that had waited patiently all day. Before climbing into the driver's seat, he looked once more at Claire. "People will always remember how you made them feel long after they forget what you accomplished. Build your company the same way." Claire nodded slowly as the pickup pulled away into the warm afternoon light. She remained standing until the old truck disappeared beyond the traffic, finally understanding that true greatness is never measured by the car someone drives, the clothes someone wears, or the title printed on a business card. It is measured by quiet character, faithful promises, and the willingness to help even those who failed to recognize your worth the first time they met you.